I was standing in the middle of a $4 million mansion, and the only thing I owned in that room was the apron tied around my waist. My father, Arthur, stood on the grand staircase, raising a glass of champagne to the 200 guests who had come to celebrate my sister's wedding. He smiled, that tight, satisfied smile I knew too well, and announced that Vanessa, my younger sister, was now the official owner of the Glass Peak. The crowd cheered. Vanessa beamed, clutching her fiancé's arm like a trophy. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply reached into the pocket of my maid's apron and pulled out a single document. It was a quitclaim deed. With a steady hand, I signed my name at the bottom, placed the paper directly next to the 4-tier wedding cake, and turned around. I grabbed my daughter Lily's hand, and we walked toward the massive front doors. I didn't look back at the flowers, the champagne tower, or my father's smug face. I just checked my watch. I knew exactly what was going to happen in 60 seconds. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. To understand why I just evicted my entire family during the toast, you have to rewind 48 hours. I was standing on the balcony of the Glass Peak, the architectural masterpiece I had spent my entire career working toward. I'm Elena, 32 years old, and I design homes for billionaires who want to feel like gods. But this house? This was supposed to be mine. I'd poured $250,000 into the down payment and bled $9,000 a month for the mortgage. I built it to be a sanctuary for my daughter and me. My parents, however, saw it differently. To Arthur and Martha, my house wasn't a home. It was a free venue for their golden child, Vanessa. The nightmare started the moment Vanessa got engaged to a man whose net worth was entirely theoretical. She demanded the wedding happen here. Not asked, demanded. My mother sat on my custom Italian sofa and laid out the terms. Vanessa needs the perfect backdrop, she said, waving a hand at the panoramic view of the Austin Hills I paid for. Then came the condition that made my blood run cold. You can't be a guest, Elena. You're too intense. You'll draw focus. Her solution? I would manage the catering. I would wear a uniform. I would be invisible in my own home so my sister could shine. I looked at my mother, searching for a trace of irony, but there was none. She genuinely believed that my purpose on this earth was to bankroll Vanessa's delusions. I wanted to throw them out right then, but I didn't. I nodded. I calculated. I realized that if I played the servant, they would never suspect I was actually the executioner. But the financial abuse wasn't what sealed their fate. It was what I found when I went downstairs to check on my daughter, Lily. I had set up the master guest suite for her, a safe, quiet space away from the pre-wedding chaos. But when I opened the door, the room was full of dog toys. Vanessa's fiancé's corgi was sleeping on the bed, enjoying the climate-controlled air. I found Lily 2 floors down, in the server room. It was 90 degrees in there, humming with the deafening roar of the smart home cooling fans. My 8-year-old was curled up on a camping cot, sweating, trying to read a book by the blue light of a blinking modem. Auntie Vanessa said the dog needed the AC, she told me, her voice small, trying so hard to be brave. She said I wouldn't mind the noise. That was the moment the last thread of filial duty snapped. They hadn't just disrespected me. They had treated my child like livestock. I looked at Lily, sweating in the dark. And then I thought about the deed sitting in my office safe. They thought I was a doormat. They forgot that I was the one who designed the locks. I closed the door gently, walked back upstairs, and picked up the phone to call my lawyer. The timeline for their destruction had just moved up. I locked myself in the staff bathroom, off the main kitchen. It was the only room in the house without a smart lock, just a simple, heavy deadbolt. Hanging on the hook behind the door was the uniform. A black dress, a white apron, and a pair of sensible rubber-soled shoes. My mother had bought it. She had even texted me the size, adding a helpful note that I should probably wear Spanx so I didn't look frumpy next to the bridesmaids. My phone buzzed on the marble vanity. It was Martha. Guests are arriving. We need champagne on the terrace. Don't embarrass us, Elena. I stared at the screen, and for a split second, I felt that old, familiar reflex, the urge to apologize, to rush out, to fix everything. It was a physical ache in my chest, a programmed response drilled into me since childhood. Psychologists call it learned helplessness. It's the behavior of an animal that has been shocked so many times it stops trying to escape, even when the cage door is wide open. For 32 years, my family had trained me to believe that my compliance was the price of their love. They taught me that keeping the peace was a virtue, when in reality, it was just a trauma response. I had spent my life thinking that if I just gave a little more money, built a bigger house, or stayed a little quieter, they would finally see me. But looking at that cheap polyester dress, the fog lifted. I realized that my silence hadn't been buying me love. It had been buying them ammunition. Every time I said okay, I wasn't being a good daughter. I was being an accomplice to my own erasure. I picked up the dress. My hands didn't shake. I stripped out of my silk blouse and tailored slacks the clothes of a CEO and stepped into the costume of a servant. I buttoned the collar. I tied the apron strings tight around my waist. I looked in the mirror. To anyone outside this room, I looked like a woman who had been defeated. I looked like the invisible, dutiful daughter who had finally accepted her place at the bottom of the hierarchy. Good. Let them think that, because this wasn't submission. This was camouflage. Every minute I spent pouring wine and fading into the background was a minute Arthur and Vanessa spent lowering their guard. They thought the uniform meant they had won. They didn't realize it was a Trojan horse. My phone buzzed again. A single text from my lawyer, Gregory. Upload complete. The city server has received the revocation request. We are live. I hid the phone deep in my apron pocket, right next to the quitclaim deed I had printed out that morning. I smoothed the front of my dress, checked my reflection one last time, and unlocked the door. I walked out into the kitchen, picked up a silver tray of crystal flutes, and stepped into the party. I wasn't the help. I was the predator, and the hunt had just begun. The reception was in full swing. 200 guests mingled under the vaulted glass ceilings I had designed to catch the perfect angle of the Texas sunset. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, refilling glasses, dodging eye contact with people who used to be my peers. My college roommate was there. She looked right through me, assuming I was just hired help. It stung, but I kept my head down. I had a job to do. I was heading back to the kitchen to restock the hors d'oeuvres when a hand clamped around my upper arm. It was Arthur. He didn't look like the benevolent father of the bride anymore. His face was flushed with whiskey and adrenaline. He dragged me into the butler's pantry and kicked the door shut. The noise of the party instantly muffled, replaced by the hum of the industrial refrigerators. "You're doing a great job, Elena," he said, his voice dripping with false praise. "But we need to handle the paperwork. Now." He pulled a folded document from his tuxedo jacket. The quitclaim deed. He smoothed it out on the stainless steel counter next to a tray of half-eaten crab cakes. "Sign it. Transfer the title to Vanessa. It's her wedding gift. I told you. I'll sign it next week," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Let her enjoy the party." Arthur's smile vanished. He leaned in close, smelling of scotch and expensive cologne. "No. You'll sign it now. Or tomorrow morning, your mother and I are filing a petition for full custody of Lily." The world stopped. The kitchen went silent. "Excuse me? You work 80 hours a week, Elena," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You're unstable. You're obsessive. You drag that poor child to construction sites. We've already spoken to a family law judge. We'll paint you as a neglectful workaholic, and we have the money to make it stick. Sign the house over, and you keep your daughter. Refuse, and we take her." He wasn't bluffing. I looked at the man who had raised me, and I didn't see a father. I saw a terrorist. He was weaponizing my career, the career that paid for his lifestyle to steal my child. I looked down at the deed. Grantor. Elena Vance. Grantee. Vanessa Vance. And then, the tumblers in my brain clicked into place. Arthur thought this piece of paper was a victory. He thought he was taking an asset. He didn't know he was taking a bomb. By forcing me to sign this, he wasn't just stealing the house. He was legally removing the only person qualified to keep the building open. The moment ink hit that paper, the safety protocols I had programmed would view the house as unsupervised. I looked up at him. I didn't show fear. I didn't show anger. I showed him exactly what he wanted to see. Submission. "Okay," I whispered. "I'll sign, but I want to do it out there. During the toast. If I'm giving her a $4 million gift, I want people to see it." Arthur beamed. He clapped me on the shoulder. The loving patriarch once again. "That's my girl. Smart choice." We walked back out. The best man handed the microphone to Arthur. He tapped it twice. "Attention, everyone. A special announcement." The room went quiet. "My eldest daughter, Elena, has a magnificent wedding gift for her sister." He beckoned me over. I walked to the cake table. I took the heavy fountain pen from his hand. I signed the line. The ink flowed smooth and black. I capped the pen and pushed the deed toward him. "It's all yours, Dad," I whispered, leaning in so only he could hear. Every brick, every beam, and every consequence. He was too busy holding the paper up to the cheering crowd to notice the coldness in my eyes. He thought he had just won the lottery. He had no idea he had just pulled the pin on a grenade. I walked toward the massive front doors, holding Lily's hand tight. Behind me, the sound of applause was deafening. My sister, the new owner of a $4 million asset, grabbed the microphone from Arthur. Her voice boomed through the surround sound speakers I had calibrated myself. "Thank you all for coming," she squealed, drunk on attention and free champagne. "And a special goodbye to my sister, who finally realized she doesn't belong in a house like this. Don't let the door hit you on the way out." Laughter rippled through the room. It was the sound of total victory for them. They had the deed. They had the house. They had humiliated me in front of the entire city. To anyone watching, I was the loser walking away with her tail between her legs. I pushed open the heavy glass doors and stepped out into the humid Texas heat. We walked down the limestone path, past the infinity pool, toward the edge of the driveway. I counted the steps. 10, 9, 8. "Mommy, why are they laughing at us?" Lily asked, looking back at the house that glowed like a jewel in the twilight. "They aren't laughing at us, baby," I said, checking the time on my phone. "They're laughing because they don't know the punchline yet." We crossed the property line. Click! A deep, mechanical thud resonated through the ground, like the tumblers of a giant vault falling into place. It was a sound you feel in your teeth. I stopped and turned back. Inside the house, the music cut off. The warm lighting vanished, replaced by a pulsing red emergency glow. The speakers boomed to life with a flat, authoritative voice. "Alert. Primary architect not detected. Geofence breached. Initiating safety protocol." My parents thought a smart home meant playlists and blinds. They didn't understand that on an unstable cliff, smart means survival. I had programmed the house to lock down if the licensed architect me was no longer on site. Steel shutters slammed over the windows. The doors sealed and magnetically locked. Then the HVAC shut off. Within minutes, the glass mansion became an oven. Through the reinforced door panel, I watched panic spread as guests pounded on the exits. Vanessa screamed at a control panel. But guest codes don't override a structural lockdown. Only the architect's biometric scan could. And the architect had just transferred ownership and left. They wanted the house. Now they were trapped inside it. I leaned against my car as a convoy arrived, not police, but City of Austin Fire Marshal and Building Code Enforcement. I had called them 20 minutes earlier, right after signing the deed. The fire marshal raised a bullhorn. "This building is condemned. Evacuate immediately or face arrest." 200 guests crawled out through a muddy service hatch, dresses ruined, tempers frayed. Vanessa emerged last, her wedding gown streaked with dirt, the deed clenched in her hand. Arthur screamed that I'd trapped them. The marshal asked one question. "Who owns the property?" Vanessa said she did. Then the next. "And who is the supervising architect?" "I was," I said. "Until I transferred ownership and was relieved of duty," I explained calmly. The house sat on a Class 4 unstable cliff. The occupancy permit required the licensed architect to live on site at all times. The moment I left, the permit expired. Legally, it wasn't a home anymore. It was a condemned construction site, and the owner was responsible. Vanessa was handed a citation. $50,000 per hour in fines, plus emergency response costs. "You knew," my father whispered. "I tried to build something safe," I said. "You wanted power. Now you have it, and all the liability." I didn't evict them. The law did. 6 months later, the bank foreclosed. Without an architect, the permit was never reinstated. The fines destroyed them. Vanessa declared bankruptcy. The wedding never became a marriage. Now I'm building a new house, simple, stable, on solid ground. No grand staircase, no guest wing for people who hate me. "This is your room," I tell my daughter, pointing to the biggest space on the plans. They wanted a mansion. I built a home. Sometimes you don't need revenge. Sometimes you just follow the rules precisely.